Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these 5 topics that are listed in the Hindu newspaper. Now coming to the first news article. Now this article is saying that how does PM Vidya Lakshmi differ from other schemes? Now this is a scheme to support meritorious students by providing financial support in application of their higher education. Now how this financial support is provided? Government does not provide direct financial support. Rather, it enables the banks to give guarantee free or collateral free loans to the students. Now this is the main purpose of the scheme. Now this article is saying that how this scheme is different from other schemes. Now if you see the previous schemes, especially the main difference comes from the number of institutions that are available under this scheme, how the loans are processed and what is the income gap and who can apply. Now these are all the main difference. Now if you see previously there are many schemes for the higher education, that previous schemes cover only low income families. Now that is one of the main difference here. Now this scheme covers middle income families also. Another important difference that highlighted by this newspaper is that earlier schemes supported educational institutions which are accredited by the NAC and NBA, National Assessment and Accreditation Council and National Board of Accreditation. Now this new scheme will take the institutes which are covered only by the NIRF rankings. That is around 860 unique institutes that are ranked under the NIRF rankings. Now keep this in mind, this PM Vidya Lakshmi scheme is only covering the institutions that are getting ranks under the NIRF. Okay, now from the prelims perspective, remember the fact that this is a central sector scheme. What does it mean? If it is centrally sponsored, both central government and state government will provide the money. If it is central sector scheme, only central government provide the money, right? Now, this concept or this scheme is relevant from the examination perspective. If you see the GS paper, there is a syllabus topic called education, social sector development, human resources. Now, in all these topics, you can use one of the example. For example, if you see previous year question GS2, it was asked that quality of higher education in India requires major improvements to make it internationally competitive. Do you think that entry of foreign education institutions would help improve the quality of higher and technical education in the country? Now, in this context, this article is very important, right? Now, we will see certain things that are important from the mains perspective also. Now, certain people are saying that if the scheme is limited to certain institutions, that is NIRF rank institutions, did increase the competition between institutions, right? Now, in this context, ranks become more important among the institutions and between the students because students also compete to get seats in this education, admission in this education institutions, right? This create highly competitive field. And there are students who are average students or below average students, but who want to study in prestigious institutes are excluded. Now, this is one of the argument that is creating. Now, another important limitation is that this create institutional divides. What does it mean? Because certain institutes are considered more esteemed, and people who studied or graduated from that are considered esteemed students who have self-esteem, right? Are greater opportunities. Now, this creates difference in opportunities for the students. Next, financial difficulties, right? As it is providing financial support and guarantee-free loans for only institutes of NIRF rankings. Now, what about other students studying in other colleges, right? No, these are the challenges. But someone who are supporting, arguing that because of these type of limitations, only meritorious students will be supported. And not only that, in India, there is a mushrooming of educational institutions. In India, there is more education institutions, but employability is very less. As you know, as per the skill census, it is being said that around less than 50% of the students are only employable who are graduating recently, right? Now, in this context, schemes like this are very important, especially for the meritorious students. Now, this scheme from the prelims perspective is also very important. We will see some prelims facts. Remember, this is a central sector scheme, not centrally sponsored. Now, another important thing is this is a collateral free and guarantee free loans to the students. Now, if the question is saying that if it is zero interest loan, then it is a wrong statement because there is interest. Collateral free means you did not give any documents of your land or house or something like that. Now, there is a PM Vidya Lakshmi portal, though this portal is integrated to the public sector and private sector banks. Now, this is very important from the prelims perspective and mains perspective especially. You can use these type of schemes in the GS paper to e-governance also. Now, in this way, you can cleverly integrate a single news topic into multiple syllabus heads. Now, eligibility criteria, right? As it is said earlier also, institutions should get NIRF rankings. Now, it has been said that both government and private institutes are eligible under this, okay? Annual family income should be up to 8 lakhs and should not be eligible for benefits under any other scheme. Now, another one is that 3% of interest subvention is given. So, this indicates that there is interest. Okay. Now these are the things you should be keep in mind. Now coming to the next article. Now this article is saying that genetically modified crops can help fight hunger depending on the farming method. Now this article is relevant from the examination perspective, especially in agriculture, GS paper 1 and GS paper 3. Now why? It is being said that in the past PYQs are asked about impact of climate change on the food, like that, and impact of genetically modified crops. In PYQ prelims also there are questions about genetic modification technology, right? And in this context, this article is very important. Now, this article highlighted that in the context of climate change, productivity of agricultural lands are decreasing. Not only that, there is a population explosion. Pressure on the land is increasing. So pressure on the forests are increasing. There are a lot of deforestation happening, especially to increase the food production. Now, in this context, genetically modification of the crops is very much relevant. Now, that is what this article is saying. This article is saying that there are certain advantages of using and disadvantages also regarding genetically modified crops. Now, we will see that in an organized manner, especially from the prelims perspective and mains perspective, mostly mains perspective. Now, if you see the first benefit that is mentioned by this article is higher yields. Why? Now, it is said that there is increase in population across the world, right? So this increases the pressure on the land. For this, if we do increase the agriculture fields, it leads to deforestation, and hence it is against again a conservation. Now, in this context, genetically modified crops enables us to plant less saplings to get more products. Now, in this way, genetical modification crops can be altered. Now, what is meant by, first of all, genetic modification of the crops? See, certain parts of the plant's microbiome structure is altered either by removing or inserting a new gene to get the desired characteristics. Now, that is what genetically modification, right? Okay. So, the next important benefit is improved nutritional value. Now, it is seen that in India also there are many young children who are facing the issue of stunting, wasting, obesity, underweight. Now, all these are because of the micronutrient deficiencies, right? Genetically modified crops can be used to induce this nutrition, address the problem of malnutrition. For example, you know about biofortification of golden rye, which provides vitamin A. There are issues faced about iodine deficiency, which lead to thyroid diseases, iron deficiencies, which is affecting the blood fusion, right? So omega-3 oils, all these are the genetically modified crops, and biofortification of beta carotene. Now things like that can improve nutrition capacity of the individuals. Now next, resistance to pests. Now you may have heard about the genetically modified crops like BT cotton, BT brinjal. And BT cotton, the pest gene is altered in which bollworm is resisted, right, for the crops. Now things like that. Now if you resist the pest, we need to use less pesticide. Less pesticide means less input cost for the farmers. Now this reduce the burden for the farmers and increase the profit. Now that is what this author is saying. Now other important thing is tolerance to environmental conditions. Now because of the climate change and increasing heat waves, there are issues of facing such as less productivity, less moisture, damage of food products, something like that. So there are crops now, and we know that there is a decrease in the groundwater table, right, in India. Now, to address these things, there are water efficient crops that are developing, drought resistant, salt tolerant. Okay. And now, due to climate change, rainfall is also altered, weather patterns are changing. Now, in this context, genetically modified crops that can suit all these conditions are very important, such as to create climate resilient crops. Now, recently, Narendra Modi said that in a meeting, India developed 2000 varieties of climate resilient crops, right? Now, in this context, genetic modified technology is very relevant also. Now, next important thing is fourth generation biofuels. Now, we may have seen about National Biofuel Policy of 2018. Now, which also mentioned about the fourth generation biofuels such as algae, cyanobacteria. Now, these things are useful for creating biofuels, right? Next, phytoremediation, in which GM technology used to alter the certain genes in the plant so that they can absorb the metals, biodegrade the waste. Now, this can be helpful in waste management, pollution management, etc. Now, in this way, genetic modification crops have multiple benefits. Now, these author mentions certain challenges. What are the challenges? Now, first and foremost important challenge is unintended economic consequences. Now, what does it mean? See, genetically modification crops, that research is done by the private companies. This alteration of genes is done by the private companies. Once it is emerged, now what will happen? These private companies will claim monopoly on it. Now, hence, the same genetically modified crop or seeds may not be available to everyone at equal level, right? Now, certain people who have access become more prosperous. Now, things like that, this is very important to be remembered. And next important thing is that monoculture practices. The people or landers who have large amount of land, right? They will do monoculture practice of this GM crop. This lead to effect of native species, right? Biodiversity may be lost, things like that. Next important challenge is highlighted by this author is impact of herbicide tolerant crops. Now, you may have heard about glyphosate, right? Now, this article also mentioned about glyphosate. Remember this word, this is a herbicide. UPSC asking that glyphosate is sometimes seen in the news. It is related to which are the following. It is a herbicide, not pesticide, okay? Now, there are crops which are become tolerant to this glyphosate. There are organisms also. So, over the time, if you use same herbicide, that weeds will develop resistance. Now, this is like microbial resistance in pharmaceutical industry. Now, if you use a similar type of drug every time for a small disease, it will develop resistance over the time. Now, that is what happening in the agriculture also. Now, the same with pest resistance also. Now, pest resistance is developed, for example, it's been said that continuously using the pesticides also, the pesticides are not killing because of developments of resistance by these organisms. Now, this is one of the important challenges. Next important is effect on the biodiversity, especially honeybees and other pollinators. You may have heard about that population of honeybees is reducing. This affects overall population of the honeybees and it affects food security also. As it is said, there is less focus on the climate resilient crops. Why? Why? Because companies are more profitable in producing this pest resistant and disease resistant because climate resilient is not profitable. People are not looking that. Now, another important thing highlighted by this author was the long-term impact. Why long-term impact? Because the effect of these genetically modified crops will only feel after many years of its use. Now, recently Supreme Court also put on hold the use of GM mustard. The reason is the same. The many people have apprehensions about the effect of GM mustard on biodiversity, right? So the court said that, and the author also said that we cannot leave the people to see the effects of the genetically modified crops. We need long-term research. That is what this author said. Now, these are the challenges. Now, from the examination perspective, you have to remember certain things. Genetically modified organisms in India are regulated under an act called Environment Protection Act of 1986. There are certain bodies who are regulating these organisms, such as Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee, Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, Review Committee on Genetic Manipulation. Now, all these are the statutory bodies established under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Remember these facts from the prelims perspective. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that Coffee Board devises a roadmap with eyeing on doubling production exports. Now, this article is saying that Coffee Board of India embarked on a 10-year plan that is from 2024 to 2034. Why? Now, in this year of span, it want to double the exports, double the production, and enhance the area under coffee production. And not only that, it have the plan of expanding the markets of the coffee by developing special varieties. Now, it want to take 10,000 small farmers and develop 100 FPOs in which they want to expect increase in production and they want to capture more markets globally. And not only that, they want to increase per capita coffee consumption also. Now, in this way, they want to cater to the local, domestic, and international markets. Now, this is what the article is saying. Now, this article also mentioned about development of 10,000 coffee kiosks in which women entrepreneurs are supported. And this article also mentioned that there is a demand of increasing demand about the inclusion of coffee under the PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Why? Fasal Bima Yojana provides insurance, especially due to climate change. There is a lot of crop damage happening, right? Now, presently, coffee is not covered under the PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Now, there is a demand for increasing to include coffee under the Fasal Bima Yojana. This is what the context of the news. Now, why this news is relevant? Yes, this news is relevant. If you see the previous year question, 2022 prelims, it was asked about tea board in India. Now, the question says that tea board is a statutory body or not. Yes, it is a statutory body. It is a regulatory body attached to the Minister of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. No, this tea board is concerned to the Minister of Commerce and Industry. Now, this statement is wrong. Next, tea board's head office is situated in Bengaluru. No, this is wrong. Its head office is in Kolkata. Now, the board has overseas office at Dubai and Moscow. Yes, this is correct. Now, option is D, 1 and 4. Likewise, coffee board is also relevant from the examination perspective. Now, from the prelims perspective, let us see some facts regarding prelims Coffee Board of India. First and foremost, Coffee Board of India is a statutory body. if it is started body, what is the statute? The statute is Coffee Act of 1942. Now, where is the headquarters? Now, headquarters is in Bengaluru. Now, under which ministry it is? Now, it is under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, remember certain facts that Karnataka accounts for 70% of the total coffee production in India. Okay. Now, India is the sixth largest producer of coffee beans. Okay. Now, Brazil is the largest producer. Now, remember these countries also, so that you may eliminate the option in the prelims. Now, coffee was introduced in India during the late 17th century. Now, why I have given this statement? Because previously, UPSC has a habit of asking questions whether some plant or crop is a native or not. Things like that. So, coffee, that means not a native plant. It was introduced by someone. Next, remember these states. The top state is Karnataka, after that Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and after Andhra Pradesh. Remember these four important states, and after that, keep in mind certain names of the states also, because UPSC previously asked that in 2023, I think, in which of the following states are generally known as tea producing states, right? Now, whenever any question comes like that, you can eliminate. Now, what are the conditions for growing coffee? Why it is relevant? Because if you see previously question in 2010, it was asked that coffee plant requires a hot and humid climate of tropical areas, whereas tea can be cultivated in the both tropical and subtropical areas. Yes, this statement is correct. Now, in this way, studying conditions for growing coffee is very important. What are the conditions? It requires thick natural shade. That's why it is much prevalent in Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, and also evergreen forests of the northeastern India. Another important thing is 65 to 70% of the coffee produced in India is exported. And what are the conditions it required? Hot and humid climate. Temperature should be 15 to 28 degrees Celsius, and rainfall of 150 to 250 centimeters. Right? Next, what is harmful for the coffee is frost, snowfall, high temperatures above 30 degrees, and strong sunlight. Now, just remember these facts. You can use them in the mains examination also, because in mains also, sometimes there are questions asking about what are the crops that are suitable in hilly areas, things like that. Okay. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that long fight for accessibility, dignity in the Indian prisons. What is the context of the news? Now, the context of the news is that the author highlighted the challenges faced by the inmates in the jails, and particularly disabled people, because disabled people require specialized personal assistance, but in jail it is not provided. And not only that, jails have inadequate infrastructure. For example, a specialized assistance is required for disabled people, especially for using toilets, fetching water, having a bath, things like that. And personal use, there is special assistance which is not provided in the jails. And not only that, disabled people are easy targets for abusing both verbally and physically and violence from the fellow prisoners and also prison staff. Now, the author highlighted that there is a lack of data among the state prisoner officer, prison staff, or with the government to take the reforms regarding the prisoners with the disabilities. Now, there is unavailability of functional wheelchairs, platforms, floors, etc. in the jails. Now, the author also highlighted there is a discrimination among the prisoners regarding the caste, allocation of work, division of labor within the prison. And not only that, there is an issue of unequal treatment. There is giving VIP treatment certain personalities, celebrities. For example, recently there is issue highlighted in Karnataka, where one of the cinema actor given special VIP treatment also. There is issues like that. Now, there is a case, Supreme Court case that is mentioned in this article, that is Upendra Bakshi. Now, keep this case in mind. You can use them in the examination also. This Upendra Bakshi was the state of UP case. It said that all the prisoners in India have the right to equality, freedom of life, and personal liberty. Don't confuse when we say that right to equality. It doesn't mean that a normal person and person who is in the prison equal. It doesn't mean like that. Now, there is a concept called like should be treated alike, right? And dissimilar should be treated differently. What does it mean? Though there are people outside the prison and inside the prison are different, but there are people within the prison has to be treated similarly. Okay, that is what here right to equality. And there is a this case or Ramurthy versus State of Karnataka also highlight that prisoners have the right to live with dignity. Now, this author is saying that the prisons have inadequate facilities, hence prisoners, especially disabled people, cannot live with dignity. Now, the author highlighted certain other things or infrastructural deficiencies in the jails. Especially, it said that jails are overcrowded. Now, why it is overcrowded? It is said that presently Indian jails consist of 5.73 lakh people, but its capacity is 4.36 lakhs, which is exceeding the limitation. Now, among the prison inmates, most of them are facing the under trial. This indicating the delay in justice. It is said that around 75% of inmates, as per the NCRB, National Crime Record Bureau, they are under trials. Now, it is that the majority of these under trial persons are scheduled caste, Dalits, tribes, poor people who cannot access to justice. Now, all these things are indicating the failure of effectiveness or questioning the effectiveness National Human Rights Commission. Why? Because National Human Rights Commission has the power to go to the jails and check the conditions of the prisoners, whether there is human rights violations or not. And NALSA, that is National Legal Services Authority, which has the provision under Article 39A to uphold, that is providing free legal aid to the poor, and judicial and criminal system in providing speedy trial. Now, and also this is against the principle that jail is an exception, bail is a rule, right? Now, things like that. Now, other also given certain example, that is about G. N. Sai Baba, who is a Delhi University professor but recently died. Now, before died, he have taken 10 years in jail because of accusation of linking with Maoist. But after 10 years, he was acquitted that he don't have any links. Now, he was a disabled person. Now, he faced lot of issues. And now, after weeks of his acquisition or removal from the jail, release from the jail, he was died recently. Now, this case is a classic example of or question to the human rights conditions, judiciary, and criminal justice system. Now, this is what this article is saying. Now, from this article, you can use this article in multiple questions in a very smart way. For example, though the question may not come directly from about the Indian prisons, you may use this as an example regarding any question regarding vulnerable sections, especially person with disability, right? Next, effectiveness of NHRC. Next, judiciary. Why judiciary? How? Judicial activism. For example, in this article, it is mentioned that this Ramurthy case, actually, this verdict is given based on a letter written by a person in the jail directly to the Supreme Court. Now, this is considered as judicial activism. Now, the other highlighted, another important thing is that rights that are only on paper. The other highlighted, there are certain conventions, directions, criteria, rules that are given, but they are only on the paper. For example, it said that Nelson Mandela rules regarding prison, United Nations Convention for the Rights of Persons, Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016, Minister of Home Affairs Model Prison Rules, etc. Now, all these are there. They have right intention, but there is a lack of implementation. Now, that is what this article is saying. Now, this article mentioned another important point is lack of political will. Why? Now, it is said that prisoners don't have the right to vote. And not only that, the people in the society are indifferent and stigmatize the people from the prison. Hence, politicians are the less incentives to look after the prisoners. Now, this is the context of the news. You can use them in multiple syllabus papers like this. Okay. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that Tamil Nadu heatwave policy is only a start. Now, what is the context of the news? Recently, Tamil Nadu government declared heatwave as a state-specific disaster. Why it is a state-specific? Because there are certain disasters which are notified under the Disaster Management Act of 2000 by, which are called notified disasters by the central government. There are certain disasters which are notified under this, but can be state-specific. For example, lightning that can occur only in a specific area, heat waves, which are considered as a state-specific disaster if that particular state want to declare. Now, this is what done by the Tamil Nadu government. Now, why central government was not declared? Now, it has been said that, especially said by the Finance Commission, it increases the burden on the government because especially heat waves are concentrated in few areas. So, it is a responsibility of the state government. Now, that is what the Finance Commission said. Now, why it has to be declared as state-specific? Because if any disaster is declared as a state-specific, it will get certain institutional assistance. What does it mean? If the person died of something, they will get ex gratia, or before death, they can provide state-sponsored assistance, for example, providing infrastructure. For example, if it is heat waves, it can provide cool water kiosks, cool shelters, guidelines, direction. All these things can be provided by the government. And not only that, by declaring as a state-specific disaster, they can use 10% of the state disaster response fund to the state-specific disasters. Now, this is what the context of the news. The news is saying that it is very appreciable that Tamil Nadu has taken the policy of heat wave as a disaster, but it has also certain apprehension because of the limitations of the policy. Now, the policy excluded certain deaths under the heat stroke because of limitation, because it is really difficult to identify the deaths and ascertain that it is especially due to the heat wave. And there is a condition that regions particularly need to have data about ambient temperatures. Now, all these are the very difficult things as a perspective of data to get and ascertain that particular death. The death is completely related to the heat wave. Now, these are the limitations. As it is a news completely related to the state, we don't go into the policy aspects, but we will study heat wave as a theme, which is important, especially GS paper 3. It is important on the disaster management, and GS paper 1. It is important on the climate change effect on food agriculture. Right? Now, before going further, we just see what is heat wave. Now, as per the IMD, heat wave temperature is considered as heat wave because if it crossed 40 degrees or more for the plain areas, 37 degrees or more for coastal areas, and 30 degrees or more for the hilly areas. Okay. And now this is a condition called as a period of abnormally high temperatures. Now you can use these things in the mains examination as a data also. Now I already said that certain disasters are notified under the DMA Act of 2005. Now these notified disasters are 13. Just remember, not everything is under the notified disaster. For example, there are cyclones, there are droughts, floods, tsunami, hailstorm, landslides, cloudburst, etc. Pest attacks, all these are the notified disasters. Now, from the main perspective, we will see what is the causes of the heat wave and impact of the heat wave. Right? Okay. Now, what are the causes of the heat waves? The main important cause is prevalence of hot and dry air. What does it mean? See, hot air acts as a reservoir of heat, and as it is dry, it can transport the heat in the surrounding areas also. Okay. Another important cause is absence of moisture. When there is moisture, it traps the heat. But because of the lack of moisture, there is minimal trapping of heat, right? And the heat directly reaches the ground, and the ground will radiate back. And next, cloudless skies. What does it mean? Generally, if there are clouds, the solar radiation will reflect back. But because of the lack of clouds, it directly reaches the ground and increase the heating. And next, geographical conditions. There are particular areas which are more prone to the heat waves and increasing temperature, especially arid and semi-arid areas in Western India and Sahara region of Africa. Next, climate change. What does it mean? Now, heat waves are also caused by the climate change because of increase in greenhouse gases. This global warming potential of setting gases are very important. They retain the heat for the long term, right? Now, these are the causes of the heat waves. What are the impact? There are diversified impact. The first and foremost impact is on health. There are people that are died. For example, NCRB data says around 700 people are died because of the heat stroke during the heat waves. And this also leads to dehydration, things like that, and cramps, dizziness, something like that. And this more affects vulnerable sections. That means old people, children, pregnant ladies, etc. And there is an important thing is that it affects the productivity of the human resource also. Because of the heat waves and all, you cannot work at the outside for more hours, and especially the poor. It affects poor people disproportionately. Why? Because poor people mostly work at the outside, especially the farmers, right? And it also affects the water resources. For example, it has been said that heat waves lead to drying up of the lakes. No, it affects the water resources in that way. Energy or electricity. No, during heat wave conditions, there is increasing demand of electricity for the cooling appliances, electric appliances, things like that. Okay. It also differential impact. For example, there are people who have good socio-economic conditions can afford cooling devices. Hence, it has a differential social impact also. Next impact thing is crops and livestock. Why? Because heat waves lead to drying up of ponds, wetlands. This affects the areas available for the grasslands and drinking water available in village ponds. This affects the crops and livestock. And next important thing is effect on the forest. See, 21% of the India's forest is prone to the wildfires. Now, the heat waves exacerbate these situations. Okay, these are the impact. Now, what can be the suggestions? Now, NDMA provided certain guidelines also. That are general things you may be aware of. For example, it said that avoid going out in the sun between 12 and 5 p.m. Drink sufficient water as often as possible. Avoid alcohol, tea, coffee, and other carbonated soft drinks, or use ORS homemade drinks. Keep livestock in the shade. Use damp clothing, take bath, or something like that. So these are the things you have to know and you have to keep in mind, especially from the prelims perspective. Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day.